Ah, ok, pardon. C'est bon? Hello, welcome everyone. So my name is Ambre Soubiran. I'm going to be talking about bridging CeFi and DeFi. And we're going to look at that through infrastructure and especially data infrastructure. So I'm going to start talking. Relax, it's only going to be 20 minutes. Hopefully a very nice digestive break. I don't have a clicker. Is there a clicker? Excusez-moi. Je suis désolée, j'ai pas de clicker. Ah. Sorry, my bad. Shall I start again? I'll start again. Yep. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ambre Soubiran, and we're going to be talking about how do we bridge CeFi and DeFi. So just one kind of statement to open this talk. The first thing is about the availability of reliable and actionable financial data and how it's key for individuals, institutions, and enterprises alike in order to build financial applications on Ethereum. We hear a lot about DeFi. Finance without reliable financial data is kind of useless. So here we'll talk about this importance of data, the importance notably of the interoperability between CeFi and DeFi from an infrastructure standpoint, and how we at Kaiko are approaching it through the lens of financial data. So, very quick intro on myself and Kaiko. My name is Ambre Soubiran. I'm a mathematician by training, and I worked about a decade in traditional investment banking before joining full-time the crypto life back in 2016, and I'm now the CEO of Kaiko. So Kaiko is the leading provider of enterprise-grade financial data on Ethereum, on blockchain. We offer an API data platform that gives access to real-time and historical market data covering pretty much any type of crypto assets that trades anywhere. We cover currently 120,000 different crypto asset instruments. We cover spot, futures, options, swap. We look at centralized exchanges. We look at decentralized exchanges. And we answer the hard question of what is the price of any given crypto asset. Our clients and our kind of addressable markets are institutions, so we're a B2B focused company. We work with institutions, enterprises in the space that need data infrastructure in order to enable either investment strategies or just products. Couple of edges, we do what's called like on-ramp, off-ramp, from and to the blockchain from a data perspective. I'll get back to that later. We define standards and we build this interoperability between institutions in traditional finance and what's going on chain. And we have a quite unique data set. Our team is 30 people, headquartered in Paris. We have an office in New York. We're opening an office in Singapore, and we're hiring. So if you like what's coming next, feel free to reach out. So just to set a little bit the scope of the conversation here, it's really about blockchain as a technology and as a platform to enable the application of the development of financial applications. And how do we create programmable money? How do we implement financial contracts? And how do we create financial instruments? I'm a huge believer in the adoption of blockchain as a core infrastructure for traditional finance to kind of come on-chain. So either you think about traditional finance moving on-chain or you think about that as the growth of DeFi. Regardless, what I believe in is that we're going to use blockchain in the future to represent the ownership of any type of traditional assets and to represent the transfer of that ownership. The opportunity is huge. We're talking what I call digital finance or global wealth kind of onboarded onto a blockchain from an infrastructure standpoint. And we know it works, right? When we look at DeFi, DeFi is a very incredible sandbox if we compare it in terms of size to traditional capital markets, but it's a sandbox that proves that blockchain just works. You can implement all kinds of financial applications. We now have money markets, decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, a lot of incredible things that are just relatively basic financial applications that now live on-chain. So going back to infrastructure and this interoperability of infrastructure. What is, first of all, market infrastructure? Market infrastructure are all of these providers that enable a more kind of institutional use of different services. We're thinking data providers, ETP issuers. When you hear about ETFs or trackers or all those financial products, those are created by ETP issuers that are regulated entities. You have market makers, you have calculation agents, brokerages, exchanges, clearing and settlement houses, custodians. All of these kind of infrastructure companies are very important for the establishment of any kind of industry. Just a very quick kind of overview of all the different market infrastructure companies that are out there. It's huge. The landscape is continuously growing. An impressive amount of kind of funding is being thrown at those companies because we understand the value of having these companies just building and laying out the fundamental bricks for DeFi to grow and to onboard onto the blockchain more traditional assets. So now, moving to what Kaiko does best, data infrastructure. What is it? Why is it useful? It's useful for pretty much everything when it comes to financial applications. So market data actually powers financial markets for everything. What you're seeing here on the side are the different use cases for market data. You need it for live data feeds. You need this for historical data, for strategic backtesting. You need that for research. You need that for post-trade valuation. You need data for evaluating assets under custody. You need data for monitoring markets and above prices. You have those notions of market depth, bid-ask spreads, liquidity. All of these things are derived from financial market data. Who uses that? Everyone within the kind of B2B market. We're working with brokerage companies. We're working with custodians. We're working with market makers, regulators, audit companies, tax companies. Institutional investors, asset managers, etc. However, it's a hard thing. There is this notion that data is free, either because centralized exchanges publish their data for free, or because decentralized exchanges live on a blockchain and data is inherently free. However, there's a lot of hard kind of industry pain points that make this a very hard problem to solve if you want to do it reliably and at scale. And those problems are, first of all, it's an incredibly fragmented exchange landscape, hundreds of exchanges, different kinds of on-chain protocols. There's no standard taxonomies. I'll give an example of how we're solving that in the later stage. It's time-consuming. It's expensive. I'd be ashamed sharing how much we're paying in terms of just servers and Google Cloud and AWS and OVH and all of these things. It's actually quite consuming. There's no historical data available. That's less true for on-chain stuff. Obviously, on-chain, the data is there and it stays there. It's more about how do you extract it from a blockchain. However, for centralized exchange data, they give all of the kind of real-time trades and order books through APIs, but that disappears over time. And finally, reliability. With data, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you have good data, you can build intelligence on top of the good data. If you actually build intelligence on top of unreliable data, well, you end up with something that is as unreliable as the data you had initially. So all of these are really industry pain points, and this is what we're solving with Kaiko. How is market data bridging all of that? There's new market entrants that are coming into the DeFi, blockchain, crypto space, and they need to rely on accurate and timely market data feeds. Those channels, in order to ensure consistent data delivery, are super important, both on-chain and off-chain. And so we are building data channels in order to deliver data both through traditional participants. Now you've seen this kind of strong institutionalization of the space with the arrival of a lot of large banks and institutions and asset managers that are now looking very actively at crypto. These guys need reliable data feed, right? We need to be able to take data on-chain and bring it to a Fidelity, for example. So this is a problem for which you need crypto data channels that can be integrated with traditional infrastructures. And of course, you also need to incentivize users on the other side, right? So reliable and familiar data is important. It's not just about delivering kind of bulk raw data. It's also about making that data intelligible and usable by the end user. So crypto market data must be interoperable. And I shouldn't, maybe this is not the right room to say that, but I'm amazed at what we're building with DeFi, but I also think we shouldn't forget about looking at what exists and taking the best of what's already there, right? The current kind of capital markets world may be, in some ways, a bit antiquated. In some other ways, they've been decades of financial engineering where we have been thinking and working on how to implement just finance at a large scale. So a lot of things have already been built. A lot of financial infrastructures have already been built. It's thinking about how crypto enables us to rethink and potentially transform and improve a lot of parts of markets, and especially into how we represent ownership and how we transfer ownership in an entirely decentralized way. However, collaboration is essential. And we, at Kaiko, I come from the traditional financial investment banking industry. I'm completely passionate about blockchain and crypto and DeFi, but I really think that leveraging both is key to enabling DeFi success at large. So in practice, what do we do and how do we try to address that problem? We're connected to all the centralized exchange in order to get their market data. We're also running Ethereum nodes in order to extract Uniswap and other DeFi protocols data. We then put all of that into a consolidated data pipeline where we clean the data, we standardize it, we store it, we create a whole suite of analytics, and then we deliver this data. And we deliver it in various ways. A few of them are very traditional type of institutional plumbing, which is a data feed, a market API, stream protocols. But we also deliver data back on chain. So we work with oracles and we provide any kind of traditional DEX data, SEX data onto oracles and vice versa. Technically, if we're thinking of using blockchain to enable the application of real-life financial contract, we will need the ability for a data company to write on-chain data that is not necessarily found on-chain. So it's about building this on-ramp, off-ramp from into the blockchain from a purely data perspective. This is our DeFi roadmap. It's pretty heavy. It's to talk about the fact that initially for institutions, all the DeFi world and decentralized exchange data was a little bit considered less liquid and less interesting. I think this is changing. This is really shifting now. We're getting increasing interest from traditional institutions to understand data and for us to actually model those new types of data sets that are created by on-chain protocols and how for them to get access to that data in an intelligible way. So we've released Uniswap and SushiSwap already. We have Curve coming up, Balancer, 1inch. And we're working on also adding liquidity events. The notions of a liquidity pool is very different than one of an order book, which is how traditionally offer and demand are represented on traditional exchanges. And so we're also working not just on implementing DeFi protocols and putting that into a traditional financial data box, but rather trying to understand how we can model those new types of data as well. So why is it very important? This is a quick thing to really kind of express one more time the importance of data at every stage of the investment lifecycle. We're thinking pre-trade, you need historical data for research, you need to run backtestings on strategies, you need to understand how an asset behaves. And that could be going from kind of a retail user who's investing in a new crypto and he just doesn't want to buy necessarily at the top of the bubble or at the bottom of a dip or whatever. It's important to understand the past. It's important to understand real-time data during the trading process, and that goes through looking at things that go above prices, going back to the notions of liquidity that are extremely important, especially in crypto. We're very often biased by the notions of market cap that can be important, but it's very important to understand what is the available market depth and what is the actual liquidity placed on order books. So real-time trading data, very important, and then post-trade. Not for retail users, but for most regulated entities, post-trade data is very important. When you need to do reporting in the context of any kind of regulatory requirement, you need to have reliable data that you can use to measure performance. And this is another part that we have a proposition for. Just a very simple example on what I was saying earlier about enabling interoperability from an architecture and infrastructure standpoint. We've been working for over 3 years with Bloomberg on the expansion of an existing data standard called FIGI. And that is currently being extended by Kaiko to cater for crypto assets. I'll give a very basic example. When you invest in a product or a cryptocurrency and you say this financial contract is based on the price of Bitcoin, how do you record that from a kind of computer standpoint? The price of Bitcoin doesn't mean a thing. The price of Bitcoin against dollar kind of means something, but it's not very accurate either. If you say the price of Bitcoin dollar at 4 p.m. on Coinbase, that means something, and that can be programmatically kind of extracted, and you can use that data. So what we've done is that we've extended that standard called Figgy in order to have unique identifiers to describe the asset level, such as Bitcoin, the pair level, such as Bitcoin dollar or Bitcoin euro, and to drill down to the exchange level, the trading venue level. So you'd have a specific semantically meaningless identifier to clearly identify in a contract, in kind of metadata, the exchange level Figgy. So you can say, now I'm implementing a contract, and for the settlement price, I want the average price of Bitcoin dollar on whatever exchange at that specific time over that period of time. And here you have precision, you have reliability, and you're able to know how you're going to find the price that is going to be used as a settlement price for your contract. And this enables automation, and this enables interoperability between traditional finance and decentralized finance. So I've tried to squeeze it in, not too long. If there's any question, and if I have time, happy to take them. But otherwise, feel free to reach out.
So is there any question?
Hi, Amber. That's a really interesting talk. Thank you very much. So now with Figgy, there is this data standard framework that say if I'm on Bloomberg, I can plug into this to understand the pricing data, right? What are some of the adoption challenges you've seen from traditional finance getting into crypto?
So about the standard, just one point on that is, I think it's a good point, what are the pain points? Creating a standard is easy. Getting people to use your standard is the hard problem. That's why we decided to not start creating a standard, but rather choose a standard that is widely used. There are 800 million Figgies in circulations today for all kind of traditional asset class, equities, debt, loans, corporate debt, anything. And so we've decided to take an existing standard that are being used by capital markets institution and extend that standard to cater for crypto assets. So that's kind of first part on the standard. We hope that the fact that it's already an existing standard is going to make adoption very easy. And now, in terms of institutional adoption, I'm going back, referring to that initial slide around market infrastructure, not just data, the ability to have a reliable custodian, the ability to have reliable execution, the ability to have regulation in place. It's really about the fundamental bricks for institutionalizing. And when I say that, it's not a negative thing about DeFi, and I'm not saying necessarily bring the traditional finance people onto the blockchain. I'm just thinking we should look at what is happening in traditional finance and take some of those necessary bricks and build that on-chain. And it's happening. I mean, it's completely happening. I just want to stress how in order to grow and to scale and to attract more people onto that space, we need to have those reliable providers of kind of core support and infrastructure for the industry at large.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is that it for the questions?
Do you have any plans to provide other kinds of data as financial data? I'm thinking about other kinds of on-chain metrics.
Yes, at some point. It's definitely something we would want to do. For now, we've taken the approach of focusing on the more scarce data in terms of availability. So centralized exchange data disappears over time. Whereas, for example, when we've implemented Uniswap, we were able to backfill all historical data because here it's really a technical challenge. So on-chain data is definitely going to come. We're starting to focus on what we do best, which is still financial data within on-chain. And we're not yet doing network metrics. There are competitors that are doing very well network metrics. So we're kind of, for now, sticking to financial data and actually adding value more towards financial data. We're working on using the options data to create some implied vol surfaces. We're working on, things that would be more taking financial data a bit further and adding layers of intelligence to that, rather than necessarily trying to do all things data on crypto.
Hi. Have you seen any platform or marketplace with a significant volume of securities traded on the blockchain?
You mean security tokens?
As in like shares or derivatives? Yeah, security.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's starting. There's Arcax in the UK that are building their security token platform. They just got an MTF license, so it's starting. And for me, this is the most incredible way that we can really rethink financial systems is really today, if you think about it, a sure certificate or a debt certificate is already represented in an entirely digital way, right? It's just like the way to get your digital ownership of that thing is incredibly centralized and incredibly kind of cumbersome in terms of intermediaries. So how about we actually start by representing ownership on blockchains for anything? I'm not talking necessarily like digital art, which is also interesting but completely different. Let's start with assets that you actually need to prove that you own. I mean, any kind of investment that you do, whenever you borrow money, whenever you lend money, whenever you buy property, this is a relatively low-hanging fruit, is let's start representing ownership of assets in a different way from a back-end standpoint. So I really think there's a huge opportunity for the security token landscape.
Yeah, I'm actually working on something in that area. Another question: do you have any interesting clients from like government sector that you can share?
We're under heavy NDA from most of our clients, so not really, but we did present our services recently to the SEC. They're very interested in understanding, the valuation services, how do we actually give a fair price for what was the price of Bitcoin dollar that day, for example, because a lot of regulated institutions in the US, for example, have to report their daily NAV. So how do you fix a methodology to find what is the price you're going to use for your NAV calculation? All of those considerations are very important for regulators. And the other one is generally regulators work with academia, and this is to do research on market surveillance, fake volume, fake trading. All of these things are something else that is interesting from a data standpoint for regulators. I think I'm over time, but if you want to reach out, here are my details, and happy to take anything. And we're hiring, we're growing, so feel free to reach out if you have any interest. Okay. Right, we're good. I think we're good. Cool, thanks.